It's midnight. You're exhausted, but your mind won't stop. Replaying that meeting, rehearsing tomorrow's conversation, spinning worst-case scenarios until dawn. Marcus Aurelius, the most powerful man in Rome, dealt with this exact problem every night. Marcus Aurelius ruled the Roman Empire from 161 to 180 AD, but he called his position a prison. He commanded armies, managed senators who wanted him dead, and faced constant plague and war. He wrote in his meditations that he often couldn't sleep, his mind trapped in the same loops we experience today. Unlike other emperors, Marcus had no escape. He couldn't drink himself to sleep or distract endlessly. He needed his mind sharp for decisions that affected millions of lives. So he turned to Stoic philosophy, specifically a technique his teacher Epictetus taught him about managing the wandering mind at night. The pressure was relentless. Every night brought new anxieties about betrayal, military defeats, and the weight of impossible responsibilities. In his private journal, he asked himself, "How do I put down thoughts that serve no purpose?" That question led him to develop what he called evening retrospection. The core Stoic principle Marcus used is called fantasia cataleptique, roughly translated as impression management. The Stoics believed thoughts aren't the problem. The problem is assenting to them, giving them power by treating every mental impression as deserving your attention and emotional energy. Marcus wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." But he was more specific about nighttime thinking. He said the untrained mind assents to every impression. It treats every worry as equally urgent, every thought as truth. Here's the psychological insight. Overthinking at night happens because your mind doesn't distinguish between productive planning and useless rumination. It lacks what the Stoics called the discipline of assent, the ability to examine a thought and consciously decide whether it deserves your energy or should be dismissed. This isn't suppression. The Stoics never said, "Don't think about it." They said, "Examine the thought with rigorous honesty, strip away its false urgency, and only engage with what's genuinely actionable right now. Everything else is released without guilt." The first technique Marcus used is what I call the control audit. Before sleep, when anxious thoughts arise, you ask one specific question about each. Is this within my control right now, in this moment, not tomorrow, not in theory, right now? If the answer is no, you explicitly release it. Here's the mechanics. Keep a notebook next to your bed. When a worry surfaces, let's say anxiety about a client meeting tomorrow, write it down, then ask the question. Can you control how the client reacts? No. Can you control whether they sign? No. Can you control your preparation? Yes, but you've already prepared. Done. Right. Not in my control now. Released. Let's take a specific example. Sarah lies awake worrying her boss thinks she's incompetent because she stumbled through a presentation. The control audit. Can she control her boss's opinion right now? No. Can she control the past presentation? No. Can she email a follow-up in the morning? Yes, but doing that now would be impulsive. So she writes, "Boss's opinion, not in my control tonight. The presentation is done. I will send a professional follow-up tomorrow at 9 a.m. with the additional data." The thought isn't suppressed. It's examined, triaged, and scheduled. Her mind can release it because there's a plan for the controllable part. The key is the physical act of writing released. It creates psychological closure. Marcus didn't just think this process. He wrote it in his journal every night, creating a ritual that signaled to his mind, this review is complete. The issue is filed, not forgotten. The second technique is what Marcus called evening retrospection, but with a specific Stoic twist. You review your day not to judge yourself, but to practice what he called objective representation, seeing events as they actually were, not filtered through emotion or narrative. Here's how it works. Before sleep, you mentally replay 3 moments from your day that are bothering you. For each, you describe them in completely neutral language, as if you're a camera recording facts. Marcus wrote, "Strip away the legend that excites passion. Remove the story you've added. Example, instead of thinking my coworker humiliated me in the meeting, the objective representation is I proposed an idea. My coworker said he disagreed and explained why. Other people listened. The meeting continued. Same events, zero interpretation, just what a video recording would show." Then ask, What did I add to this that caused suffering? Maybe it's the narrative that disagreement equals humiliation. Maybe it's the assumption that others judged you. Maybe it's the belief that one moment defines your competence. Write down the specific interpretation you added. This is what Marcus meant by the mind's additions. Let's take David, who can't sleep because he thinks he failed a job interview. In evening retrospection, he replays it objectively. I answered 12 questions. 3 answers were shorter than I planned. The interviewer took notes throughout. She said they'd contact me next week. The interview lasted 40 minutes. Facts only. Then he identifies his addition. I decided that shorter answers mean failure. I assumed note-taking meant criticism. I interpreted 40 minutes as bad without knowing their typical length. By stripping these interpretations, the anxiety loses its foundation. He didn't fail. He had an interview with an unknown outcome. That's all. The third technique Marcus used might seem counterintuitive. He practiced something called premeditatio malorum before sleep, but not how most people think. It's not catastrophizing. It's a specific exercise in removing a worry's power by facing its worst realistic outcome with acceptance. Here's the process. Take your biggest nighttime worry and ask, if the worst version of this happened, what would I actually do tomorrow? Not, how would I feel? What would you concretely do? Marcus wrote, frightened of change, what can take place without it? Is there anything more necessary to nature than change? Example, you're lying awake terrified of getting fired. Instead of spiraling, you apply premeditatio malorum. If you were fired tomorrow, what would you actually do? You'd file for unemployment. You'd update your resume. You'd reach out to 3 contacts. You'd cut non-essential spending. You'd survive like millions do. Write this action plan down. The magic happens when you realize, even in the worst case, you have agency. The catastrophe becomes just an unpleasant situation with concrete steps. Marcus used this before battles. He'd imagine defeat, plan his response, then release the anxiety because he'd already faced it mentally and survived. Take Jennifer, awake at 2 a.m. convinced her relationship is ending because her partner was distant tonight. She practices premeditation. If we broke up, I would grieve. I would stay with my sister for a week. I would restart therapy. I would eventually date again. I would rebuild. The fear loses its vague, infinite quality. It becomes survivable. This isn't pessimism, it's preparation that creates calm. The Stoics called it rehearsing misfortune. You're not manifesting negativity. You're proving to your anxious mind that you have capacity to handle outcomes, which removes the need to control them obsessively at night. Here's what people get wrong about this Stoic approach. They think it means becoming cold or uncaring, just letting go of everything. That's not what Marcus practiced. He cared deeply. He worried about his empire, his children, his responsibilities. The difference was he refused to let worry become unproductive repetition. The common pitfall is thinking these techniques will stop thoughts from arising. They won't. You'll still have anxious thoughts at night. The Stoic practice isn't thought prevention, it's thought triage. You're training your mind to distinguish between a thought that needs attention and one that's just mental noise repeating itself. Another mistake, treating this as a one-time fix. Marcus did these exercises every single night for years. He didn't expect perfection. Some nights his mind still wandered. But the practice built a mental habit. His mind gradually learned that bedtime wasn't problem-solving time. It was review, release, and rest. The final pitfall is trying to logic your way out of every worry. Some nights, the anxiety has no logical source. You're just tired and your nervous system is activated. The Stoics knew this. That's when Marcus would simply write, "This is not for tonight," close his journal, and practice accepting that some discomfort is just part of being human. So here's what Marcus Aurelius figured out 2,000 years ago that still applies when you're lying in bed at midnight. You can't control whether thoughts arise, but you can absolutely control which ones you give weight to. Your mind will generate anxieties. That's what minds do. It's not a malfunction. The control audit teaches your mind to distinguish between real problems and mental rehearsals of problems. Evening retrospection strips away the emotional narratives you've unconsciously added to neutral events. And premeditatio malorum removes fear's power by proving you can handle outcomes so you stop needing to control them. These aren't three separate tricks. They're one integrated practice, examining thoughts with disciplined honesty, releasing what isn't yours to solve tonight, and building trust that you have capacity for tomorrow. Marcus called this the inner citadel, a trained mind that external chaos can't penetrate. Start tonight with just one. Keep a notebook next to your bed. When the overthinking starts, write down 3 thoughts and ask, is this in my control right now? For anything that isn't, write the word released and mean it. That's the beginning of what Marcus spent his life perfecting. The emperor who ruled the ancient world still couldn't control his racing thoughts, but he learned to work with his mind instead of against it. That same capability is available to you tonight. Not by controlling thoughts, but by choosing which ones deserve your attention before sleep. If this gave you something to think about, I'll see you in the next one.